In comparison with the giant sauropods of the Jurassic period, Plateosaurus was a medium-sized animal. But during the late Triassic it was one of the largest dinosaurs on Earth, and one of the first really big dinosaurs. Plateosaurus was a member of the Prosauropoda, a small group of dinosaurs closely related to the later sauropods. Prosauropods flourished during the late Triassic, but they became extinct at the end of the early Jurassic period. In the early 1800s, more than 100 skeletons of a large extinct reptile were discovered in a single quarry in central Germany. They were very well preserved, and 10 complete skulls were recovered. These fossils were named Plateosaurus by the German scientist Hermann von Meyer in 1837. This preceded the invention of the term dinosaur by 5 years, and it was not until some time later that Plateosaurus was recognized as a dinosaur. Like other prosauropods, Plateosaurus had a long neck, a small head, and an elongated, barrel-like body.
Its limbs and tail would have been equipped with powerful muscles. The hind limbs were very long, and it appears that Plateosaurus was capable of walking bipedally. It would also have been able to rear up onto its hind legs. In combination with the long neck, this would have allowed Plateosaurus to feed on branches 10 to 13 feet, 3 to 4 m, above ground level. Its arms were quite short, but its broad hands would have been able to support a lot of weight. This suggests that Plateosaurus usually chose to walk on all fours. Plateosaurus is usually thought of as a plant-eating dinosaur. But large claws on its thumb and on the second toe of the foot have led some scientists to suggest that it might occasionally have eaten meat. Its teeth show a combination of features that would have been useful in both chopping up plant food and catching small prey. Plateosaurus might have used its claws for tearing up roots, the carcasses of dead animals, and insect mounds. The claws could also have been used to defend against attack from large predators.
This colossal sauropod is one of the most familiar dinosaurs and is often called Brontosaurus. Apatosaurus was a close relative of Diplodocus and lived in the same areas of North America during the late Jurassic period. Like Diplodocus, it had a long whiplash tail and short forelimbs. It was much more sturdily built than Diplodocus, although not quite so long. Scientists have made many mistakes in their studies of Apatosaurus, including giving it the wrong name and even the wrong head. The name Apatosaurus, deceptive lizard, is very appropriate, as it was associated with one of the biggest blunders in dinosaur science. Professor Othniel Marsh studied a few fossil bones of a new dinosaur in 1877 and gave it the name Apatosaurus. 2 years later, he examined another collection of fossil bones. Thinking these were from a new sauropod species, he named this dinosaur Brontosaurus, thunder lizard. Later, it was realized that all these fossils came from the same type of animal, and that Brontosaurus was, in fact, Apatosaurus. Because Apatosaurus was the first name to be proposed, it must be the official name for this creature. The skulls of the plant-eating sauropods are very rarely preserved, probably because they were lightweight, flimsy structures. So scientists do not know what the skulls of many sauropods looked like, even though they might have found all the other parts of the animal's skeleton. In one quarry, an Apatosaurus skeleton was found very close to a Camarasaurus skeleton and a skull. At the time of the discovery, it was not known what the head of either animal looked like. Scientists thought the skull might belong to Apatosaurus, as it lay slightly closer to this skeleton than to that of Camarasaurus. For many years, skeletons of Apatosaurus were displayed in museums with a model of this skull attached to them. But new discoveries showed that the skull actually belonged to Camarasaurus. As a result, Apatosaurus remained headless until scientists discovered a new skeleton with the proper skull attached. Apatosaurus had forked spines attached to the top of the bones of its neck and the front part of its back. These spines were small but important, because they supported a large cable-like ligament that in turn helped support the neck and tail. Ligaments, found in the bodies of all backboned animals, attach muscles to bones. In contrast, the spines attached to the hip bones were not forked, but were very long. They had massive back muscles attached to them, which might have enabled Apatosaurus to rear up on its hind legs. If it did this, its tail was probably used as a third leg to prop it up. In this way, Apatosaurus could reach high up into the trees in search of particularly juicy leaves and shoots. Brachiosaurus was once thought to be the largest dinosaur of all. Some scientists estimated that it weighed as much as 80 tons, making it heavier than the combined weight of 20 adult elephants. Most scientists now accept a figure of about 50 tons, still much heavier than any land animal alive today. The name Brachiosaurus refers to the very long arms of this sauropod. Brachiosaurus was the only dinosaur with arms that were much longer than its hind
limbs, a feature that raised the chest and shoulder region of this animal to perhaps 8 feet, 2.5 meters, above ground level. However, these long limbs were surprisingly slim, not strong enough for Brachiosaurus to run or even to walk too quickly. The long arms might have been useful in stepping over large obstacles, or they could have been an adaptation for feeding on tall trees. The neck also contributed to this high-level feeding strategy. It was made up of 12 individual vertebrae, each of which could be over 28 inches, 70 centimeters long. This gave the neck a total length of about 30 feet, 9 meters. Add this to the height of the shoulders, and it would be reasonable to suggest that Brachiosaurus could reach plants up to 36 feet, 11 meters, above ground level while standing on all fours. Few other sauropods could reach these levels, so Brachiosaurus was able to feed with little disturbance. When Brachiosaurus held its neck upright, it would have been very difficult for the heart to pump blood all the way up to the brain, unless there was some way to boost circulation. This problem could have been solved in several ways. The heart might have been capable of keeping the blood pressure very high, so that blood could always reach the brain. But then, when Brachiosaurus bent down to drink, the high blood pressure could cause many of the fragile blood vessels in the brain to burst. Giraffes solve this problem with elastic, muscular arteries that keep blood flowing, and a protective network of capillaries behind the brain to prevent blood from flooding it when the head is lowered. Did the problem of pumping blood to the head prevent Brachiosaurus from raising its head above shoulder height? If this were the case, why should Brachiosaurus and the other sauropods have developed such long necks? The vertebrae of all advanced sauropod dinosaurs had holes in their sides known as pleurocoels. These often became so large that the vertebrae were reduced to a honeycomb structure of struts and bars. These were filled with air sacs that made the vertebrae very light but strong enough to support the animal's weight.
Diplodocus is one of the most familiar of all dinosaurs, but in some ways it is highly unusual. Although it has the long neck, tiny head and huge body seen in all other sauropods, it differs from its relatives in several respects. The most important differences are found in the way that Diplodocus used its teeth, jaws and neck to reach, and eat, a wide variety of plant foods. The teeth of Diplodocus are tall, slim and pencil-like. Rather than running for the entire length of the jaws, they are confined to the front of the mouth, where they form a comb-like or rake-like arrangement. Such teeth are unsuitable for chewing tough plant food, and the wear on their tips suggests they cannot have been locked together to cut through leaves and stems. These features have caused some debate among scientists. Some thought that the teeth could be used to pull bark from trees, others that the rake-like arrangement might have been useful in straining weeds or mussels from ponds and rivers.
It is now known, however, that the teeth were used to rake leaves and fruits from the branches of trees and shrubs. They could also have been used to pluck ferns and horsetails from closer to ground level. Until recently, it was thought that the long neck of Diplodocus meant that it ate leaves from the tops of trees and rarely ate food at lower levels. But computer modeling and detailed studies of the individual neck bones have shown that the neck could move in a number of different ways. It seems that most of the time when Diplodocus was walking or standing at rest, for example, the neck was held horizontally. It could be lifted up to reach the treetops, but it is likely that Diplodocus could not have held the neck in this position for long periods of time. Special joints between the neck bones allowed the neck to be moved from side to side as well as up and down. This flexible neck would have allowed Diplodocus to feed on food from a variety of heights above ground level. Another clue that suggests Diplodocus sometimes fed on low-growing vegetation comes from its forelimbs. The front legs are very short for an animal of this kind, and as a result, the front of the body, including the head, is held closer to the ground. Diplodocus might have used its tail as a powerful weapon against marauding meat-eaters, such as Allosaurus. The end of the tail is very thin and could be swung from side to side at great speed by massive muscles at the front end of the tail. This whiplash could be flicked at predators and would strike a severe blow. Some scientists have suggested that the tail moved so fast that it even sounded like a cracking whip. This is one of the earliest known, large meat-eating dinosaurs.
Dilophosaurus fossils have been recovered from early Jurassic rocks in the deserts of northern Arizona. It was the largest predatory animal in North America at this time and probably fed upon small plant-eating dinosaurs such as the ornithischian Scutellosaurus and the prosauropod Ammosaurus. Its skull is notable for two curious crests that extend upward from the nostrils and run back along the top of the head. The skull of Dilophosaurus is so unusual that when the skeleton of this animal was first discovered, the crests were not recognized as such. They were explained away as a result of crushing suffered during fossilization. Only later, when a better preserved skull was unearthed, were these strange features appreciated. The crests are paired, and extend away from each other and from the head in a V-shaped pattern, leaving a large gap between them. They are made from bone, but are too thin to offer any protection for the skull. So it is likely that they were used for signaling to other Dilophosaurus. Another purpose might have been for attracting mates. A discovery of two Dilophosaurus skeletons in the same place suggests that these animals might, at least for some of their time, have lived in groups. Dilophosaurus might have participated in group hunting, but it had many features that would have enabled it to hunt alone. Long, powerful hind limbs indicate the ability to run fast. The toes are tipped by long claws to grip the ground and to pin down unfortunate prey. The first finger on the hand could function like a thumb, giving Dilophosaurus a grasping hand useful for capturing and holding on to prey. And the jaws were lined with large, blade-like teeth. Another dinosaur, very similar to Dilophosaurus, has been found in China, in rocks dating from the early Jurassic period. This animal may actually be another species of Dilophosaurus. Indeed, the skull has the same paired crests running along the top surface. On the other hand, there are certain features that distinguish this animal from its American relative. The two dinosaurs differ in the number and shape of teeth, and in the sizes, shapes and positions of the various holes in the skull that house the jaw muscles and glands. And similar skull crests have now been identified in other theropod dinosaurs that were not so closely related to Dilophosaurus. So scientists are still debating whether this Chinese animal is Dilophosaurus. Baryonyx was discovered in 1983 in a quarry in southern England. It was a surprising and important find, as paleontologists had collected fossils from these rocks for many years but had not found any evidence of this dinosaur before. In addition, Baryonyx is very different in shape from most other meat-eating dinosaurs and had a very different diet. The skull of Baryonyx is very long, low and narrow. The nostrils, instead of being at the tip of the skull as they are in most other theropods, are placed about 4 inches, 10 centimeters, back along the snout. The teeth are wider, with finer serrations, than the blade-like steak knife teeth of other meat-eaters, making them more efficient stabbers than slashers. At the ends of the jaws, the teeth are larger in size and stand out from the bone in a circular rosette pattern. These types of skull adaptations can be seen in the modern fish Cating crocodilian, the gavial of southern Asia, and strongly suggest that Baryonyx lived on a diet of fish. The teeth of Baryonyx could pierce soft flesh, and their rosette structure helped it grip and hold slippery fish. As its nostrils were placed farther back, it could hold its snout in water and breathe at the same time. The arms are very strong and end in large claws used to hook fish out of the water. Complete with horny sheath, the biggest claw is nearly 1 foot, 0.3 meters, long. Baryonyx lived during a time when the south of what is now England enjoyed a subtropical climate. It lived on a large river delta, or floodplain, very close to the sea. Large fish, some of which reached as much as 10 feet, 3 meters, in length, inhabited these waters. The partly digested remains of some of these fish, including scales and teeth, were found preserved in the stomach region of Baryonyx as the fossil was excavated. Some features of the hand and skull suggest that Baryonyx was also a scavenger, that is, it fed on dead animals. Its strong arms and claws might have been used to rip open carcasses. And the position of its nostrils would have enabled it to feed with its snout deep inside a carcass, while still being able to breathe. Remains of a young iguanodon were also found close to the belly region of Baryonyx, supporting the idea that it ate not only fish but other animals too. Carnotaurus shares some characteristics with dinosaurs from the northern hemisphere, such
as the sharp, narrow curved teeth seen in all other meat-eating theropods. It has very short arm bones, similar to those of the tyrannosaurs from North America and Asia. In contrast, other features, such as the horns, are unique to Carnotaurus. The horns are made from bone and extend upward and outward from the rear corners of the skull. Other large theropods, such as Allosaurus, can have bony prominences over the eyes, but not as large as in Carnotaurus. The horns might have been used for display. But, as so few Carnotaurus skeletons have been discovered, we do not know whether only the males had horns or whether females also had them. The snout of Carnotaurus is very narrow, but beneath the horns the skull gets much wider, with eyes facing forward slightly. As a result, Carnotaurus might have had binocular vision, in which the fields of vision of the left and right eye are able to cross. This is also a feature of human eyesight, and enables an animal to estimate distances accurately. And its agile build suggests that Carnotaurus could chase down prey. But what did Carnotaurus cat? Most dinosaurs with short arms, such as the Tyrannosaurs, have very strong, enlarged heads that served as the main killing machine. But, because of its shape and flexibility, the skull of Carnotaurus was quite weak. It could have got twisted and bent, particularly in struggles with large animals. This suggests that Carnotaurus did not often attack animals of the same size or larger than itself, as its skull could not withstand such forces. Instead, it might have preyed upon smaller, more agile animals, using its specialist vision and bursts of high speed running to catch them.
Allosaurus was the top predatory dinosaur of the late Jurassic period in North America. It is one of the most scientifically important of all theropod dinosaurs because experts know much more about its anatomy, appearance and lifestyle than any other large meat-eating dinosaur. Allosaurus is best known from finds in the western United States. It was named by Othniel Marsh in 1877 on the basis of an incomplete skeleton from Colorado. Additional remains of Allosaurus have been discovered in South Dakota, Utah, Montana, Wyoming, and New Mexico. Many complete skeletons, several complete skulls and hundreds of individual bones are now known. One of the most spectacular finds was made at a site in Utah, where hundreds of Allosaurus bones were found mixed with the bones of the sauropods Camarasaurus and Apatosaurus. Like almost all other theropods, Allosaurus was a flesh eater. The commonest North American dinosaurs at this time were the gigantic plant-eating sauropods.
Allosaurus was not big enough to threaten adult sauropods, but could probably prey upon those that were young, sick, or very old. The large size of Allosaurus suggests that it was not a particularly fast runner, but speed was not necessary to hunt sauropods, as they were very slow-moving animals. Smaller plant-eating dinosaurs, such as Camptosaurus and Stegosaurus, would have formed an important part of an Allosaurus diet, and small theropods, lizards, and mammals might also have been taken. As Allosaurus could not outrun any of these creatures, it probably lay in ambush, waiting for unsuspecting prey to pass by. Allosaurus might also have eaten the carcasses of dead animals. One of the most distinctive features of Allosaurus is the presence of a ridge of bone, or crest, just in front of catch eye. In some skulls, these crests are large and pointed, whereas in others they are smaller and rounded. The function of the crests is not known, but some experts have suggested that the differences in crest size and shape might reflect the different sexes of the animals. An Allosaurus with large pointed crests might have been male, one with smaller crests female, or vice versa. Alternatively, the crests might have had a special function, such as housing glands near to the eye.
When the first reasonably complete skeleton of Tyrannosaurus was uncovered in 1902, scientists realized they had discovered one of the most important and one of the most fearsome dinosaurs yet known. Its huge head was over 5 feet, 1.5 meters, in length, and its large teeth were razor-sharp conical spikes up to 8 inches, 20 centimeters, long. For nearly 100 years, we regarded Tyrannosaurus as the largest meat-eating animal ever known. But carnivorous dinosaurs discovered recently in South America and Africa have proved to be even larger. In contrast to the relatively light skull of animals such as Allosaurus, the skull of Tyrannosaurus is made of thick, heavy bone. The back of the head is very wide, providing space for large jaw-closing muscles. Most of the teeth are much wider than those of other meat eaters and are serrated along the front and back edges. But teeth at the front of the snout are narrower.
Thanks to the distinctive nature of the teeth, paleontologists have been able to identify Tyrannosaurus bite marks on a number of fossil bones that belong to herbivorous dinosaurs. Tyrannosaurus teeth functioned less like the slashing weapons of Allosaurus and more like large spikes, used to pierce and grip food. Powerful neck muscles aided the ripping away of large chunks of meat from its prey. Bones of the herbivorous dinosaur Edmontosaurus have been found covered in deep gashes created during this puncture and pull method of feeding. The narrow front teeth were probably used to reach into awkward gaps and tug out pieces of flesh. Other evidence tells us that Tyrannosaurus was able to crush and break bone. A Triceratops hip bone, covered in Tyrannosaurus bite marks, has had a large chunk removed. It was probably bitten away. And fossilized Tyrannosaurus dung was found to be full of the broken bones of a young Edmontosaurus. A recent study has shown that the bite of a Tyrannosaurus was 3 times as powerful as the bite of a lion. Aided by its keen sense of smell, Tyrannosaurus also perhaps scavenged from the bones of animals that were already dead. Being the largest predator of its time, it was able to scare away other feeding animals and dine on its stolen prey in peace, unless disturbed by another, larger Tyrannosaurus.
Velociraptor gave its nickname to the vicious predators in Jurassic Park that were called raptors. In fact, those movie dinosaurs were closer in size to Deinonychus. And the term raptor is normally used by ornithologists to describe eagles, hawks and their relatives, which swoop down on their prey and grab them with their sharp, curved talons. Velociraptor was closely related to Deinonychus and had many of the same features, notably the enormous second claw of the foot that made it such a formidable weapon. Like Deinonychus, it also had a long tail that was reinforced along its length by an unusual feature. The bony arches above and below the central column of tail bones were flattened and elongated into thin rods that extended forward and backward along many vertebrae. These rods formed bundles above and below each side of the central column of tail bones. They supported the tail and held it straight, but also had some flexibility.
As a result, the muscles of the tail could be reduced, whereas in most reptiles they are large to help pull back the legs in walking and running. Here, the tail was more independent of the legs. Another interesting feature of Deinonychus, Velociraptor, and their relatives was an unusual joint in the wrist. In most animals, the wrists hinge up and down because, like the foot bones, the hand bones are used in walking. But in these bipeds, the wrists were also able to move from side to side, in the same way that a bird can flex its wrists. This is not surprising, because these animals are the closest known relatives of the first birds. The sideways motion of these long hands, which helped Velociraptor and its relatives trap prey, was later used by birds as an important part of the flight stroke. Of all the features that made Velociraptor such an efficient killer, the most important was the sharply curved claw on the second toe. When Velociraptor was walking, its claws were pulled back and held clear of the ground to prevent them becoming blunt. When Velociraptor attacked, a claw could be flicked forward and downward by kicking out powerfully with one leg. In this way, the claw worked like a switchblade knife. It could cut a long wound in the prey, which would probably then bleed to death.